Welcome to Branded Worlds, a transatlantic dialogue, where branding meets culture and sustainability is the thread that ties it all together. Hosted by Jeff Solomon in the US and Stephen Baumgartner in Europe. This is where global brand stories come to life, with purpose, people, and perspective. Join the conversation. Share your thoughts on how brands can better integrate culture and sustainability. Subscribe to Branded Worlds for more insights and inspiration, and let's build a future where brands truly make a positive impact. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Branded Words, a transatlantic dialogue where branding, culture, and sustainability intersect across continents. Today's episode explores a topic that challenges every company, every campaign, and every product decision: purpose-driven merchandise.
I am super excited about today's guest, Stephen. We are speaking with someone who has helped shape one of the most respected names in responsible promotional products, a company that doesn't just talk about impact, it's built its identity around it.
Joining us today is Denise Tetreault, CEO at Fairware, an organization known for pioneering ethical sourcing, transparent production, and measurable impact in branded merchandise.
Fairware stands at the intersection of purpose and product, helping brands align their promotional strategies with meaningful social and environmental outcomes. And Denise, who is amazing, those who know her, has been instrumental in guiding that journey, whether through thoughtful design, supply chain, stewardship, or advocacy for better industry standards.
Denise, welcome to Branded Words. We're super excited exploring how purpose becomes tangible in every product and how merchandise can be force for a positive change.
Love it. Excited to be here and excited that you two have started up this conversation across the pond. I think it's only going to do us all better if we can have our conversations elevate to a global scale rather than sticking in our own borders. So appreciate that you folks are doing this.
Totally agree, and you totally get it. You brought it down to exactly what the initial idea is.
Yeah. It's been super exciting to see where this has evolved in almost a year of shows that we've done, and the content that's been shared. It's so unique. And when I did interview, deviating slightly, when I interviewed Drew at the PPI Expo, we talked about Drew mentioned there's an I in PPAI. And we're seeing that happen. And I believe Branded Worlds and the things that we're doing with Brand Merch Network are starting to merge these things together. So let's dive right into the dialogue. Let's talk about purpose into product. So Fairware's model is rooted in impact. How do you translate broad concepts like sustainability and social good into concrete product decisions that resonate with both organizations and end users?
You know, I think I'm going to start with something that might feel counterintuitive, but I think the most important thing for folks to get, especially if you're in the distributor role and working directly with clients, is it doesn't actually start with the product. And I think that's where a lot of folks gravitate to when they're starting on this journey. They've, had years of experience of selling merchandise and product, and suddenly they want to start positioning themselves as a brand as more sustainable or purposeful, or perhaps they're getting the ask from clients for more sustainable or purposeful merch, and it becomes a product game. And and I think like anything in our industry, the minute it becomes just about the product, you're commoditizing and making transactional the issue, the conversation. And I think you want to elevate it above the actual commodity and the product. You want to build the systems. You want to have the understanding. You want to be able to articulate a story and a narrative around a campaign, and not simply, sell this pen over this pen because of the resin or the material. So I think that's really important, is just elevate it. And if I were to suggest, there's a couple of things I'll share before we talk specifically about product, but one is to really think about this system that you're building. I think to start down this journey, you have to have a leader who gets it and who cares and is willing to stand behind it. I think if you have a leadership that doesn't see it as a strategic element of their business, it's going to be a struggle for the sales reps. It's going to be a struggle for the people who are doing product sourcing or production. So you need that leadership. And from that starts to trickle things like how you hire, how you train your team, how you build your systems so that your team can easily access the merchandise. They're not kind of out on their own trying to figure it out. I'll give you one quick example that just sort of illustrates that codification. For us, we're a common SKU shop. We have ESP in the background. We're going into our product sourcing database, and we've leveraged our, priority supplier tools in the back end of our systems. Instead of it just being, these are our top strategic suppliers, we've leveraged those system-based tools to articulate, our tier 1 suppliers because of sustainability certifications. And that pulls all the way through into commonsku when we're searching. But more importantly, when people come in as sales reps, they are absolutely hammered in training around, you can only pull from these categories in these tiers of suppliers. So we don't ever have an issue of a sales rep selling a random thing made out of Lord knows what, by children in China, because they've used our systems to leverage our trusted supplier base. So I just want to kind of lay the foundation that it is a lot more than finding a recycled pen or an organic cotton t-shirt. But I do think one of the things that we succeeded in early on this piece is finding the product ourselves. We've been doing this for 20 years. We're the first B Corp in the industry on the distributor side. I come from outdoor retail, it's been my entire professional career, but I think, we would go out and find brands that weren't in the industry yet. And that was a real model of success for us. Fast forward 20 years, a lot of those brands are with PCNA, they're with Gemline. When you think of, Chico Bag and Clean Canteen and Bellroy, we were working with those brands, long before they came to the industry. That's something I also would suggest to folks is find those high impact brands. If they're not in your usual sourcing channels, that's okay. Build the systems to bring them in and get them in front of your clients. But I'll leave you with the most impactful product is the one that fits the campaign objectives. And again, the minute you start talking about polymers and textiles, it doesn't matter, right? Is it a beautiful product that fits the marketing and the brand objective that your client wants, that encapsulates that sustainability or purpose-driven values that they share with you? So that's the way we approach it. Is we're really not in the game of just having a laundry list of eco-friendly products or sustainable products, or we're in the game of finding branded merch that meets the values that our clients have, but also the marketing needs. And you have to have both. You have to have both. So that's kind of our, to start, that's the way we approach it.
Mhm. You have just mentioned that you have been an early mover, I would say, and you have found a lot of hidden gems out of the retail market, and you've brought them to your customers. So how do you find them? So is it just open eyes and
I think what we found them is we're really embedded in that sustainable business world. The B Corp movement, we're trolling the directories for products that we feel like could transition over. But I'll tell you, the number one way we find people is clients come to us. And that's the thing, I think, as people in this industry, you need to understand that your customers are shopping all day long. They're finding cool things for their Christmas presents or for themselves. And our clients, we encourage our clients to bring them to us. And then we just call them. But it's not easy because, as the classics are that the colorways, stay for 8 months and they're gone. They generally don't have companion pieces. So if they do have a men's and a women in the style, they're rarely the same color. So, you do have to work through the hurdles of a retail mindset. Pick the right retail brands. Hard goods are much easier because you don't get into those same gendered colors, matching styles as you might with apparel. But I have an email template. I just turned it into a template that talks about our industry. This is the size. This is the scope. This is the wholesale channel. This is how we're integrated. It's supplier to distributor to end user. These are the margins. This is what it looks like, to decorate. Can you decorate? Can we help you decorate? Do you just want to sell blanks? Can we, set you up with some partners locally to decorate? And we just built a toolkit for retailers because I was having the same conversation over and over again with these folks, trying to explain our industry. But what you'll find is once people see the industry and understand it and understand that the typical order size for our industry, is 4 figures, and they're used to e-com sales one at a time, like their eyes kind of light up. They're like, what do you mean you want 100 at once? Like that's, or 1,000 or 10,000. So, it's a great way to go. But again, you have to be ready for it. You have to have a system. You have to know that you're going to have to carry a bit of the weight to get them into the system and understanding our workflow and understanding our deal flow. And that's, again, it's hard. We do it less now because there's more sustainable products in the industry, but we used to have to do it because there was nothing. You couldn't find anything that would meet our clients' expectations. So we'd go find product that met their expectations. Now it's easier, which I think is a great testament to our industry. We're getting there.
Have you ever failed in convincing a brand to work with you?
Yeah, like on
Just
the
mentioned it's getting
on the
easier.
supplier side, 100%. And some of it was their failure and some of it was ours. And I'll give you 2 quick anecdotes to characterize both. One that was ours. We used to, if people would find a new product, we would often bring them in to meet with the team and we talk about the product. And I just remember this one time, someone who was making cutting boards, these beautiful cutting boards, and they were using wood. I can't remember if it was Nigeria but it was a social enterprise and a co-op in Africa, and the product was beautiful. And we totally fell in love with it. We spent an hour with these guys, like my entire team, like just, it's like, do the math, a lot of money, a lot of payroll. And we fell in love with it and we set them up and we put them in the system. And then when I started talking to him, I said, okay, like if we had an order for 100, like what would that look like to deliver? And he was like, what? He's like, oh, that would take like 4 months. And I was like, what? Like, and it was this huge lesson. Qualify on the supplier side. So we learned how to qualify to see if they could meet scale, if they had the scale. But that was a good example of, we used to get so excited by supply, like these little cool companies that didn't have the capacity. On the flip side, probably the biggest issue would be they'd get a taste of the industry and then they just want to go direct, and they wouldn't understand that having a roster of sales representatives through the distributor side of things was, amplifying their possibility, and they'd kind of get a taste of it, and we'd be calling on the same people. So we, which is okay if they protect margin for distributors, but if they're selling at the same price, it gets awkward, right? So I'm not going to pitch that product if they're pitching the same product to the same customer for the same price. So we've definitely had a lot of false starts doing that, but we've had a ton of success as well, like just where our clients are getting products that tell a really deep story. Often it's a local manufacturer or something like that. And they love it and they're not getting it anywhere else. So they come back to us, so it's a journey tackling suppliers. The suppliers. I mean, as much as it's created a competitive conundrum, I'll call it, to have Gemline and PCNA, and I'm just picking on those two, but HPG's doing it and HIT's doing it. They're all bringing in brands now. As much as it sort of erodes our competitive moat, it also just makes it frictionless for my team to order great product from brands that we trust and know. And I would say that we're selling more of it as a result. Even though our competitors can, we probably have a little bit of an edge because we're so comfortable with the product already. We know how to sell it already. They've just made it easier for us to order, deliver, and decorate.
You just mentioned trust. Let's talk a bit about transparency.
Yeah.
Today's customers, they demand accountability, and Fairware has been a leader in transparent supply chains. You just explained how you get new vendors, how you convince potential partners. Most of them are more or less introduced by customers, so it's the other way around. What does transparency actually look like in practice today, and how can companies communicate it effectively to their audience?
Well, I think it depends on our supplier partners, like back to the suppliers. For us at the kind of, 30,000 foot level, we publish an impact report every year. We identify what percentage of our significant supply chain has an up-to-date code of conduct, or certified EcoVadis, B Corp. You can see the spread of what percentage of our supplier base. I think we're probably getting close to 50% certified B Corp at the supplier level. We talk about product characteristics. And so, at a large, at kind of the higher level scale, we bring that to our clients. We can send that report to our clients. Where I think it's gotten difficult in our industry is where certain areas, like product safety is a good example. You could pretty much call any supplier in our industry worth their salt on either side of the Atlantic, and get a product safety report like that. Like, you're going to get it third party. They're going to give you the tests, it'll be up to date. Where I think it's gotten more difficult is when folks are starting to dig into supply chain, worker rights, human rights, the social compliance audits at this factory level, not at the company level, where, you're looking at our large suppliers who have frameworks. They're in the Fair Labor Association, or, doing BSCI audits, or we're using RAP certified factories, whatever it might be. Again, at the high level, they have a team, they're working on it. But as you get to the product by product or the factory by factory, like, we're not there yet. And example would be, if you go to retail and you look at Adidas, you look at Nike, you look at, the Gap, like, you can see their factory base. Like, you can Google the factory list, the current factory list of Timberland, of Nike, and you can find where they're making their commodities, all the way down to the manager's phone number. That level of transparency is not in our industry yet. So, we approach it based on what can we access and what can we get. But I think that, to me, is actually the next conversation that's coming. I think, Stephen, I'd be curious your perspective on it. We are just starting to see in North America technology like Aware, like traceability down to the fiber. And I think that's been an incredible movement. Our clients are excited about it, but it's pretty few and far between in North America. I'd love to flip that back to you and say, like, what are you seeing in Europe vis-a-vis transparency that we could learn from in North America, or that you think our suppliers are going to catch on to?
So first of all, these technologies are also getting more and more in Europe. So Aware is out of the Netherlands. So they started with a huge importer called XD over here, and they have been super successful. And I know it was a long way to go for them to really get into the industry, because it's super detailed. And we all know, if you work for a company like XD, they have so many SKUs and so many different SKUs, from fashion, from textile, hard goods, soft goods, electronics. And I think this is what it makes it really complex.
Yeah.
That we are not only dealing with fashion and apparel stuff and these soft goods items. We also, on the distributor side, that makes it complex every day. So we can see that these again, technologies are getting more and more. More and more companies are using Aware. So this is really, I think, one of the benchmark technologies also over here. But also, the transparency also in the smaller supply companies is getting more transparent, so to say. So they, in the past, they were like curious about to open the supply chain, because they worried about that we jump into the factories and we do everything, import everything on our own. And they were super scared about to allow you to visit the factories in China, to say, okay, we produce in Ningbo, whatever the company is named. And I think that's also changing because you can't be a professional importer on every category.
Yeah.
You as a distributor, and if you want to do it in a very honest way, you can't import thousands of different categories and
Yeah.
do it right. So you have to stick to the professional guys.
Yeah.
You have to stick to the umbrella guys. You have to stick to the baseball cap guys because they know what, hopefully, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that if you have that open and an honest discussion with your suppliers and you just let them know, hey guys, of course we can go to Alibaba and we can try to import everything on our own. Latest when the items will arrive in Europe, I'm in pain and trouble because then I have to documentate everything and then I'm in pain. So I need to stick with you and I want to stick with you and I want to trust you that you doing your job, and on the other side, I'm doing my job to convince our end consumers or the industry customers that we have the right item with all the certification stuff in the back. So it's super complex, but you can really see that in the meantime, everyone in the game knows where they are and where they are positioned, and that it is on the other side. It's also for the importer guys, for the wholesaler guys. It's also not that easy to deal whatever we do every day to really talk to industry customers, um being in their supply chain, having all the reportings in place, having these shitty discussions about pricings, delivery times. And they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. And even if they say we can easily do this because we don't need the distributors in between, I always say, okay, come on, go for it. Try it out, experience it on your own. And believe me, you will come back in 4 weeks latest. And you will see how hard our business is on our side. And I think it's beside all the technologies, it's all about partnership in the industry. You have to find your right partners on both sides, and then you have to stick together. You have to learn from each other. You have to train each other. And I think that's the it's not a hidden secret, but that's a kind of the hidden secret, because no one.
You started this question with the word trust, and I think you just kind of nailed it. It comes back to trust. I think I do think supply chain transparency is kind of the next frontier for our industry. Retail's already there, many, many large retailers. So the consumer's expecting it. So I think if we can encourage our supply chain to kind of go there with us, do trust-based, we've had some success where we do, essentially an NDA at the supplier level writ large to get access to factory level audits, for example, because some of our clients ask for it. And that's just created a mechanism of trust, right? So it's like trust, but are there some tools that you could like lock down the trust legally or, be willing to sign, look at this is what I want it for. I'm not going to do a go around to your factory. I legitimately need it. Conversely, having the client base sign off and say this is about a transparent supply chain within our transaction and this isn't public information. So we've been trying to put some of those things in place and we've been getting a little bit further along with that. But I think you nailed it. It's everybody has a role in this industry. It's worked forever. I think it's fraying at the edges, but the more we can keep that value chain and that structure in place, I think the more efficient and effective it's going to be for everyone. Because like you said, I don't want to be dealing with import papers, and I don't think they want to be dealing with the marketing coordinator who changes their mind, at 5 p.m. the night before the product's going to be delivered. So, we all have our magic, what we, our kind of our lane. And I think the more
Totally agree.
the better.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, this is a perfect segue to the next place we wanted to go, talking a little bit about measurable impact. So beyond the claims and certifications that are out there, how do you measure the real world impact of the merch you're selling, and what are the key indicators that show that your work is actually making a difference? I mean, it is inherent that you see it, but what are there indicators for
like
that?
kind of, there's this sort of framing of beyond claims or beyond certifications, but I do think those are important. I think it's important that if you're sourcing product with certifications, that you name it, because it just reinforces the importance of this certification. So if you're selling a journal book that's FSC certified, tell your client it's FSC certified. You know what I mean? Like, reinforce that those are important, because I do think they're important, because they separate the wheat from the chaff. And like, you can't get away with vague claims in Europe, increasingly in Canada, and in the US. But so I think for us, the claims piece is a big piece. But we we look at impact in a couple of ways. One is kind of going back to what I said at the beginning. One is impact around the product. So if you're buying, a collection, you're doing a campaign, and you have 4 products in the campaign, and one's like locally sourced and, upcycled, drinkware into charcuterie trays or something, like that tells a very high impact story. You might have a couple of products that have sustainable materials, there's a textile or a polymer, and it's going a little along the way. And then you might have something like a ceramic mug. And, there's no recycled ceramic. There's no, there's no kind of story really in like what is a ubiquitous product in our industry. But of course, you can ensure it's coming out of a facility in a manufacturing factory that respects worker rights. You can, ocean freight it into North America instead of air freighting it from a carbon impact perspective. Like, there is a story within that product. So one of the things we really focus on is helping our clients understand those nuances, right? So, we'll have clients sometimes that come to us and say, we don't have the budget for a certified organic cotton t-shirt. It's like, will we sell a conventional cotton t-shirt? Yes, we will. But it's going to meet these, it's going to be Okotex on the, the product safety on the dyes. It's going to be manufactured in a facility that respects worker rights. So one of the ways that you kind of measure impact is to educate the end user on impact and like the nuance of impact. So we really try to talk about that. A good example would be a travel mug. This particular one isn't recycled stainless in terms of a certified recycled stainless. All stainless has like super high recycled, but it's only recently become certified. But the reuse aspects of this, we'll talk about that. So, when we're chatting with clients, things we've done for clients before, we're looking at a way where we could do it for the majority of our clients on the majority of our products, but it's a little bit difficult in our software, is like an impact report. So our large clients, we might at the end of the year say, you spent 27% of your spend was manufactured in North America. 42% of your spend was China. So we might do a country of origin pie chart. We might do a split of here's how much you air shipped over ground shipped. Like, this is an issue. This is the biggest issue that we have in our industry, is like shipping is a huge, huge part of our footprint. We might do a pie chart on this is the percentage of your products with certified organic fibers, certified recycled fibers. Here's the percentage of the pie that was for reuse. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of share that impact story with your client. But the other piece, and I'm really interested in work that's being done at PPAI this year on a global marketing campaign, is the idea of an ROI calculator of the marketing impact. What was the cost per impression? What was the actual takeaway? And we've done campaigns where they're part of large social media initiatives. So we did something about a year and a half ago with Ben and Jerry's. That was an influencer kit when they launched a new ice cream flavor. And of course they tracked every impression. And we got all the data, and it's a case study on our website. It is rare in our industry to get those level of impact metrics on the marketing outcomes. And so I know that Melissa Ralston and the team at PPI are working with a group right now on a broad-based marketing campaign. And part of it is to create tools for us, for PPI members and members of the collaboration to put in, we did this much product, here's the campaign, here's the cost, and it'll start to spit out an actual ROI that we can measure against a digital spend, that we can measure against a print ad, et cetera. So that's another thing that's been kind of missing in our industry, is the ability to measure ourselves against media channels. And I really look forward to that. And again, like just a, kind of a shout out here to Stephen. And I think it was in Brussels last year. I can't remember where it was, but I saw you speak last year, and you showed the video of the trade show booth that the industry did at a marketing event. So Jeff, imagine like South by Southwest in Austin, and imagine PPAI building the coolest booth with like the coolest mixologist and DJs and just a completely immersive merch experience about the medium, not about a supplier, not about, about the medium as a marketing channel. And like, that's where we need to take our industry. That's the next level, and get those impact measures. So Roundup didn't really answer your question, but that's where I think we need to go, irrespective of whether it's sustainable product or not. Like, we need to elevate our medium. We need to measure our medium so that we can show up at meetings with people like Porsche or Ben and Jerry's and show them the measurable impact.
Yeah, so again, totally agree. And I've just been on one of the other events from that trade show today. So
Yeah.
it was partnered with a big automotive company. And we have exactly talking about what you just mentioned, about, okay, what is digital about, how much spend they do have in digital media. And it is not bad to invest in hapticals. So we call it hapticals in the meantime. It sounds a bit more charming than merch or promotional items or whatever, because as soon as you start talking about promotional items in the digital world, everyone is like, oh, boring, expensive, cheap, boring shit. No one needs it. But if you talk about hapticals, it's like, okay, what is it about? And I had a super interesting conversation with the CMO of this big automotive company, and I had a super interesting conversation with the MD of this digital event. And he was like, okay, we have seen you last year, and we were so surprised about that you have not been there with products, and you have not promoted products, that you have really been there and you presented how cool your industry can be, because we had no idea at all. We were like, okay, you're a super boring industry. And we were totally crazy about it, how cool it was. And the impact was it was great. And we will do this again this year. So it will happen in May in Hamburg. It's a huge event, 2 days, 75,000 digital people coming to Hamburg. And everyone fell in love with the few merch pieces we did for this particular show. Everyone. And even the MD asked us today, will you redo the Squeezy Ducks this year again? Will you redo them in a new edition? I was like, yeah, of course we do them in a new edition. Oh, will I get one for my kids? And I was like, of course you will get one. And this is, you can't do it with a social media ad. You can't do it. You can't hand it over. And no one is asking about a social media ad from last year. No one remembers it. No one. But the Squeezy Duck from last year, everyone is remembering, and everyone's like, oh, okay.
There's something, Mandy Rudd, who's a distributor in the US, remember she said to me this year, and I'd never really heard this before, it's the only advertising people thank you for. You don't say thanks when an ad shows up, but when somebody gives you a cool t-shirt, you're like, thanks. It's like there's just such a tangible element to it that doesn't exist, elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. As we are running out of time, I think we will skip at least one of the last two questions, if that's okay for you. So which one we want to go for? Maybe Jeff, you want to raise the last one?
Well, yeah. What an engaging conversation that's on a very high level. Okay, so some distributors may be like, "What are you even talking about?" But this is so exciting that the focus in our future is moving towards more responsible products and effective branding, and it's just really exciting to play a small role in pushing that forward. But looking forward, Denise, into the future of responsible merch, over the next decade, what excites you most about? And I know there's a lot. We've already been excited about some of these things happening, but what excites you most about the evolution of what's happening here, and what do you see as the biggest opportunities and the greatest challenges?
Right.
Another big loaded question for you.
Touched on, like, I do think transparency is one of the big pieces for me. Is I think that's the future, and the faster our industry wraps our head around it, the better, and the faster we build the systems and the guardrails to trust each other and to enable us to really be transparent with our end buyers who are expecting it in other channels that they're buying things in. They're going to expect it in ours. So I think that's something that's coming. We've already talked about that. The thing that I'm kind of excited about, and it's really tactical, is the idea of choice, like giving end users some agency. So you're seeing a lot of activations happen, like pop up, live silk screening, or like making the merchandise experience an actual experience at the events. The other thing we're seeing is folks enabling, the pop-up shop, or a kind of more of an e-commerce experience where people can go in and choose what they want, or more importantly, what they don't want. And I think, you know, Stephen, you just talked about people coming up to you and saying, "Are you doing it again? I want the thing again." Like, that's great. Like, the thing is desired, it's wanted. That's great. What you don't want is people in our industry building things, branding things, giving away things that people don't want. That's how we get a bad reputation. So I think creating mechanisms, whether it's through technology or whether it's through like experiential events, where the end user feels like they have choice. I'll give you one quick example. We did a pop-up shop. It was on the tail end of COVID for Spotify. It was for a campaign that they were doing to celebrate an internal team. And we built a pop-up shop. Everything was very beautiful, high impact. And you could choose products, or they had 3 or 4 buckets of charities. And the product was in $5 increments. Everybody got $200 to buy products, and people could buy like $160 worth of merch and then take the $40 and in $5 increments deploy it against charities, right? Some people chose just to give their money to charity. Some people chose just to give, their little bit extra to charity. But it was a way that folks that didn't want the stuff still experienced the gift, still didn't resent that their colleagues got $200 worth of merch, and because they didn't want anything, they didn't get anything. They still had an experience of either giving or getting, deciding what they wanted to do. And it was a real eye opener for us. And we've since done it with other clients where we enable a charitable channel, and it just, it kind of opens up a different way of experiencing gifting. And so I think the more we can do that in the future, the more relevant our industry will become, because people will be able to choose what they want. And it'll also give us a lot of data on like what people aren't choosing. And it's like, maybe we shouldn't be selling that. Like, it's not like, it gives you a ton of insight on what people love and what people don't love. So that's something I'm kind of excited about, is enabling more choice and leveraging, technology or experiences to get there.
We are done, Denise. Thank you so much for sharing how purpose can truly shape the product, not as an afterthought, but as the foundation of design and decision making. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Denise, you showed us that when you put people, planet, and positive impact first, that you don't just differentiate, you are elevating the entire industry. And I know you've taken, leadership role in BPI, and we so appreciate all the amazing things you're doing to really you are one of the champions of the sustainable movement in the industry. And we've been wanting to have you on for a long time, and here we are. And it's been very, very eye-opening. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think everyone listening today would totally agree. This conversation reminds us that merchandise isn't just a thing, it's a reflection of values, choices, and the future we want to build.
You can listen to this episode and all our amazing Branded Worlds episode on key podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Branded Worlds Online.
Denise, again, thank you so much for joining us today and for leading with intention and clarity.